Hello. Good, it got it working at last. Right, this is a video to expose a very worrying international cancer patient bashing operation. What can only be described perhaps as one of the worst documented cases ever recorded of disableist bullying. And I say one of the worst ever recorded quite simply because it's very rare that people, or disabled people, should be able to carefully compile evidence of the abuse that they're suffering as it's happening, especially in cases of abuse such as this one. Quite simply, once a disabled person is subjected, of course, to enough intense, fierce abuse, then they are too damaged and too out of the game, so to speak, to literally be able to speak or be taken seriously or compile evidence for that matter. So this is extraordinary in that respect, that I can't think of another case that comes close to this, or somebody that has collected evidence that spans a period of 25 years. And I'm of course referring to this green line here. This is referring to the terror campaign and physical assaults that I've endured since 2003 at the hands of a very well organised gang of bullies, disableist bullies, I think is the correct term. Now, yes, 25 years on a daily basis, day to day, hour to hour, systematic abuse, very intense, and only appears to have intensified actually as time has gone on, as we can see here in 2014, this ramping up of the terrorism to include an escalation of threats and intensive suicide incitement. So yes, all the signs are there that this is have been a very full-on, extensive campaign that's lasted the best part of a quarter of a century. And the reason I'm making this video is there have been recent developments over the last few days that have further served to blow this thing wide open and give me more reason to make a video and expose the truth about what is happening here. Now, just to go back to this picture and have a closer look at who's been involved. This is around 2003. It started with these two. This is Anita Fairbank, the mother of my son, and her new boyfriend at the time in 2003, Dan Marshall. And this is his close relative here, Auntie Jill, who behaves as some kind of go-between for the children and information, etc. So yes, I mean, they're very aware. She's also been a support for this mental patient here, Dan Marshall, who tried to attack me with a brick. This is in 2003, and split my head open when I went to see my son, or at least request to spend a couple of minutes with him, which clearly appeared to get this whole operation going. Literally from that attack, we can see, if we just go quickly back to this, this is the 2003 brick attack. Literally that was the trigger and the precursor to the next 25 years, 17 years, I'm sorry, 17 years, let's get that right, I'm sorry, yeah, 17 years, it's 25 years of cancer I've suffered, and 17 years of this systematic abuse. Now, yes, just a closer look now at the people involved. I mean, this was Dan Marshall, of course, who came at me with the brick, his partner Anita Fairbank, and this is my family here, the Galizia family and the Dunkley family, my sister there, who have very sadly been very keen supporters of this campaign of terrorism that's been, as I say, going on relentlessly since 2003, and lending their unequivocal support to people who have been laying into me for some reason. Now, it's a bit hard to tell what's going on with these guys, whether my dad is intimidating the rest of my family, forcing them to intimidate me, or whether they have made up their own mind to just cut me off and threaten me like that, try and force me to take my own life in this disgusting circumstances. We can only speculate at what's going on there, whether this is a collective decision or whether this is a dictatorship in progress. But that's that side of it from the UK. Now, there's been a number of other people employed or recruited into this campaign as time has gone along. People such as, this is Ronnie Johansson, this is Anita Fairbank's latest boyfriend, and this is Sara Armstrong, who was cajoled right back in 2003. I remember she was recruited as a supporter, if you like, of this ridiculous campaign of intimidation. And this is not just a cancer patient bashing, by the way. I've also had quite a serious car accident, a head injury from a car accident, which I tried to show you here. This is a accident I had in 1981. I was hit head on by a car, very nearly killed me, left me with a very serious head injury. So there's more to it than just cancer, sadly. This is an international cancer patient. Could it be better called an international victims of cancer and car accident bashing operation? But I don't think I have the space to put that there. But yes, it's actually worse than it looks, and that can also be said for the people. There's a lot more people to this campaign than meets the eye. This is literally the tip of the iceberg. We've got cancer charities in the mix here. We've got the police have also been siding with a lot of these bullies in the past. Have dozens of more people. There's more members of my family involved in this, which I haven't included. More friends and conspirators and various Klingons, add-ons, all over the place. Literally stretching as far away as Canada. It was also not included in the map here, so this literally spans the whole globe. And it's no underestimate at all to call it an international patient bashing operation, because that's, as I say, exactly by definition what it is. As I say, these members from Norway here, these guys from England. I believe there's people being threatened in Malta down here, and I also have family, as I say, in Canada. So this is a very far-reaching campaign of intimidation, which, as I say, I think is pretty much unmatched by any other story I've ever heard. So yeah, this is in a league of its own, ladies and gentlemen, at the moment, as one of the leading contenders for one of the worst stories ever recorded in UK, certainly UK medical history and UK criminal history, which is, I find, quite astonishing. And of course, all the more amazing that I've managed to survive it, which is the point here. Now, what I'm getting to here is, as I said a moment ago, is an altercation, actually, that happened between me and this lady, who just happens to be my neighbour at the moment. This is Sara Armstrong, who has been living opposite me for the past 11 years, and has not said a single word to me that whole entire time, which is very suspicious just on its own. But yeah, she suddenly decides to launch into this tirade of insults against me. This is just a few days ago on I believe it was Friday the 8th of May, and this is after 11 years of total silence. She suddenly comes up to me at this is with another neighbour that's having a little do outside their house. I have tried to draw a picture here. This is blotted out a lot of the picture just to sort of make it as unidentifiable, with the actual street and location, etc. But this is me sitting here in my chair. I get invited into this little party that's happening next door. I just live up the street here, and Sarah is here. This is her children sitting here. There's a couple of other people and another neighbour sitting around. I won't say who they are. But I'm there for about 10-15 minutes. Sarah says absolutely nothing. Then she gets up to leave, and just before she leaves, she comes over to me and spits out this insult. She just goes, looks quite nervous and um, anxious, and then suddenly looks at me and says, stammers, this sort of said, "You're a scumbag, Chris." Hello there. Yes, I was just describing the insult I was subjected to from Sara Armstrong after the 15 minutes silence during this brief lunchtime party that happened next door to me. And this is following 11 years of silence that Sarah has subjected me to since I've been her neighbour. So yes, 11 years of silence, another 15 minutes of silence at this party, and she gets up to leave and then suddenly walks up to me and calls me a scumbag. Absolutely extraordinary. So we have to look in, examine the reasons why, look a little bit more closely at what's going on here. And as I say, if we just sort of put this, just to put it into perspective, as I say, she's been my neighbour since about 2008, 2009 here. So this is the last 11 years of total silence. Obviously knows very little about my life and my situation, quite simply by definition. She's never spoken to me. So how on earth can she know? I mean, it's all just hearsay, from some very distant people, to put it mildly, who again have never spoken to me and have just heard nonsense from other distant people. So yeah, I mean, nobody's actually come to the person and asked me what my opinion is, and that puts that in perspective. And just to put a rather closer focus on it, a sharper focus, this is Sara Armstrong on the right here, my neighbour for the past 11 years, good friends with my son's mother, Anita Fairvang, now living in Norway since about... this is good friends with Anita Fairvang since 2003, and she's been living in Norway since 2008. Came to England around the year 2000. Sarah and Anita began a hate campaign against me when they met in 2003, clearly motivated by my cancer issues, head injuries and disabilities. A clear example of extreme disability racism, judging and terrorising people for their health issues. And quite simply, I mean, as far as these two are concerned, I didn't look right. There was something about my disabilities they didn't like, and they wasted no time in just laying into me, just full pelt. And the consequences have been rather sad, to put it mildly. And I'd therefore like just to have a closer look at, just briefly, at this, or the nature of disabilist bullying, which in this slide here, disabilist terrorists with selective memory, they're a nightmare, who single people out for their health challenges, then subject them to disabilist bullying. In my case, murder attempts, perjury, GBH caused to my son. This is as a consequence of the constant terrorism I was subjected to. Blackmail, suicide incitement, serious mutilations I've suffered, threats, isolation of both myself and my son with a view to forcing us to take our own life, and constant terror campaigns for the past 17 years. So yeah, it's really full on, and as I say, one of the most intensive documented campaigns of disabilist bullying I've personally ever heard of, and I'm speaking of carefully documented cases. I mean, I've heard of other cases and plenty of worse cases, but I've, as I say, not seen very many well documented cases similar to mine, quite simply because the patients and the victims do not survive. Out of 100 people subjected to this intense sustained abuse, quite simply, out of 100 people, it's very rare that one should ever survive, or even out of 1,000 people for that matter. So yes, I, in that respect, have surprised the shit out of them, and they're not that too happy about it, to say the least. Now, Sarah has not said one word to me in the past 11 years. I've been her neighbour until a few days ago, on the 8th of the 5th, 20, when she suddenly starts insulting me, apparently upset that I went to the police to report her cowardly, heinous crimes. And this is, of course, being an accomplice to Anita Fairvang and her past 17 years of abuse. So, yeah, that is a very worrying situation, and I think therefore we have to look at a little bit more carefully at some of the circumstances that surround this. This is my battle with cancer and my experiences of scams in progress and collecting evidence to expose these scams that also clearly appear to have made me an enemy of the state and an enemy of friends and family alike. Not for any honest, justifiable reason, I hasten to add, but quite simply because I have not, or I'm not swimming with the flow like a dead fish. Now, all part of a huge global cancer charity scam, suppressing cures for sinus cancer so they can use the disease to cause maximum damage. And this is a cancer charity scam that I have been uncovering over the past few years, I would say 15, 20 years, and simply by discovering cures to a very serious type of cancer called sinus cancer, which has extremely or debilitating, nasty consequences when cures are suppressed. And this is, of course, visible in the victims of this disease, which stand to be put through the most awful misery in the absence of helpful treatments and effective cures that can reverse the illness. To suggest basically, yes, that this tumour or this cancer can just run wild, mutilating people's faces, which unfortunately from a cancer charity's point of view can represent a magnificent opportunity to make huge sums of money. And as naive as I am, it took me a while to work this out. As I say, yes, hiding cures, suppressing cures, or using the money to suppress cures in order to use the mutilated victims to collect ever-increasing amounts of money to look for cures or more cures, when in truth they use the money to suppress them and beat anyone to death for exposing the scam. And yes, I have been subjected to murder attempts quite simply for exposing the truth of what's been going on here, which is, I can assure you, not a new scam. This has been going on a very long time, the best part of 2,000 years, from what I can see. I could very easily date the treatments and the cures that I discovered and methods to reverse this illness back 2,000 years ago, to suggest to you that yes, people like Jesus and healers similar to him were crucified for a specific reason, to get rid of these damn cures so that they can make their mutilated faces and use them to collect ever increasing amounts of money. And they've been running this scam for 2,000 years. Now, this is all in the mix. This is all, part and parcel of what's been going on here with this this terror campaign. Of course, there was a murder attempt. This is in 2012, a brutal murder attempt by Asher Osmondson. You can't quite see my battered face here, but I was in a pretty bad state and very lucky to survive. And this was just around the time that I stumbled upon some quite effective treatments, I hasten to add. So it's very clear to me that other people are also being subjected to brutal beatings and murder attempts if they pursue a similar route to the one that I took, and attempt to try and expose this fraud and the treatments and the scam in progress. So yeah, that is extremely worrying, and shows me again very clearly that this whole thing is just run with brute force, violence, intimidation, and extreme terrorism. That's this end of it, and then obviously raises further questions about this disableist bullying. That obviously we can see more motives for all this to happen. Obviously, if these charities are sharing the money around liberally and spreading rumours and quietly encouraging, these bullies to just rush out and beat people to death who might be exposing them, then we can begin to see how this whole thing works. And as I say, very worrying. It's this is just a very brief look at, or this is from just a summary of what's happened, with this altercation. Hello there, I just wanted to wind this video up with a quick summary of what's been going on here. This is my conclusion, as it were. It's beyond stupid, beyond believable, into a new realm of stupid. I mean, very sadly, this is of course referring to this relentless, ruthless abuse of disabled people. It's like me or you going up to some random person in the street and insulting them for no reason. But it's worse than that. What if we only picked on disabled people, random people in wheelchairs, random victims of car accidents and cancer? We just go up to people in the street and start insulting them because they've got a disability. Which really, this is all, Sarah has managed to do at this ridiculous little lunchtime party that was happening out in the street, exactly how dumb, how evil, how plain rude and spineless can a person be? It really is plumbing the depths of stupidity, literally to the bottom of the barrel. It's like that guy in the pub who walked to the chip shop, then got beaten to death by a group of people he'd never met before. The worst type of spineless cowardice known to mankind. I think that's fairly obvious, and it does raise the next question: what if the tables turned? What if, Sarah and all this other disableist bullying crew that, all these guys, I just showed you a moment ago, were subjected to a short taste of their own medicine? What would happen? For goodness sake, they seem to be all big and hard, when it comes to bullying people together. They don't seem to have much of a problem, but as soon as they're subjected to a short taste of their own medicine, what happens? All of a sudden, bam, we discover that they're just very angry, very short-tempered, very nasty people, most of them, who literally haven't taken the time to find out, anything, or don't even care enough to find out anything about the victims of their bullying. And obviously raising the question, well, what would happen to them if they were hit by a car? If they find it so funny, levelling insults at people who've been hit by a car, how do they cope? When we have a quick look at and examine what condition they're in after they've been hit, 40 miles an hour by a car, well, like I was. And I wasn't quite this bad, I hasten to add, but I wasn't far off. I was sustained quite a serious head injury and permanent brain damage, which affected my speech slightly, and I'm very fortunate it's not any worse. But the point is there that these people don't seem to cope well when they're subjected to a short taste of their own medicine. It shuts them up, I think, is the point here. And the same goes for cancer. If they think it's so funny, just beating people to death who are trying to expose these scams, what's going on there? When it's their turn to get cancer and suddenly they want treatments and they want effective cures, there aren't any, which is only unfortunately leaving these people in a god-awful mess. And okay, it's not her fault personally, and it's but and the same goes for this poor woman here. This is quite a rare picture, you won't find this on the internet, but this does happen, unfortunately, folks. These people are literally abandoned, with their faces just being pushed into this god-awful mess, which of course is only photo candy for these charities. They love people like this last photograph that I showed you, because it means they can just pop it up on their website and use it to make money from. And of course it's very disturbing, and it's the perfect image that needed, this kind of thing, to make money. What else is going to force a person to put their hand in their pocket and hand over their money? It's obvious when you look at it, but of course nobody really seems to spot the scam until somebody raises awareness to it, raises awareness to what's happening. So yes, we go back just briefly to this. What's going on here? We find that sinus cancer is actually, of course, one of many cancers, and if you look at it like a pyramid, there sinus cancer is at the top of the pyramid, and there's a scam running right at the top of the pyramid, then there's a strong suggestion here that when this scam is rumbled, and bearing in mind it's 2,000 years old, and this is certainly nothing new, then this is going to filter down through the whole pyramid, through throat cancer, through lung cancer, through prostate cancer, through testicular cancer, right down through the body. We find that all that there's scams probably happening with all these other cancers as well, that were all hinged, of course, on sinus cancer, the one right at the top of the pyramid. And there's another suggestion here, of course, that it extends even further, that after 2,000 years of running this scam, there appears to be a very strong connection to this COVID-19 outbreak that we've experienced recently. There appears to be no coincidence that this scam has been rumbled, that this 2,000-year-old scam, literally like an old, sort of corrupt business, like the Titanic, that set off, and instead of hitting an iceberg, it's literally it's made a new virus, and it seems to me very closely linked, very closely connected. That and the fact that this, there's so much speculation about COVID-19 being man-made, is a man-made bioweapon, which all the clued up scientists at the moment agree unanimously is the case. And as I say, only seems to be a simple extension, or another tentacle, if you like, or branch to this scam that has roots that go back for 2,000 years. And the suggestion here is very clear, very strong, that until we get this root out, until we literally of this horrible plant, and it is like some poisonous toxic plant, until somebody gets their gloves on and pulls this root out, we are constantly going to be suffering from other branches of consequences that we don't understand or can't seem to stop, quite simply because it's feeding from this, which does explain why there has been so much organised violence used against me and so many efforts made to silence me exposing this scam, because there are so many things that run on the back of it. So harking back to this picture now very briefly, all the effort, and all this. How come so many people? And this is only just a very small percentage of them, just the tip of the iceberg. I literally didn't have space to include them all here. But how come so many people? Police forces, charities, organisations, my family, friends. All these people employed to the task of just manipulating, suppressing me, subjecting me just to ruthless intimidation constantly, with the sole purpose, obviously, of keeping a lid on this stupid scam. Just keeping a lid on this stupid scam so that all the other scams can run. But now, of course, this is branching out and affecting so many other people. Like, for example, with this COVID-19 outbreak, now every citizen on the earth is all of a sudden a victim of this scam, which had very humble beginnings, but now has all of a sudden, entrapped everybody in its net. Very clearly, I think, shows that it's about time that people like me were not just singled out for abuse, but instead were listened to, taken a little bit more seriously, so that perhaps we can turn this over. Perhaps instead of just campaigns of terror against me, that as I say, people start joining me, my side of the line, to literally terminate this sickening sort of abuse and fraud that, as I say, has been going on since we can virtually remember. And obviously, quite clearly, until people do join forces or form some kind of organised resistance, we never are going to see a change. This is the worrying reality, and I think it should be a call to action at the moment. And as I say, just going back, these people, obviously, so far that have been using all this abuse against me, it's literally just an army of thugs, which when they're caught on their own in this sort of stupid little altercation that happened with, this woman, Sara Armstrong, all of a sudden, bam, we find this little baby having a nervous breakdown, didn't even care or anything else. And then what we discover, at the end of it, well, sorry, just before I end, yes, these people are, they're using our kids as pawns for suicide incitement. It's just horrible. It's just disgusting. There's no excuse for it, and again, these people should go to jail for this nonsense. And would like to remind all of these abusers that you are just so full of shit, and you should have flushing handles instead of ears. I mean, quite literally, I think it's